How's it going, everybody? It's Pilot Flame, and we are back with another preseason FPL video, and today we're continuing our Team Watch series, and up next, it's the Premier League champions. It's Manchester City with their newly signed Erling Haaland just over my shoulder. We're going to take a look at their defensive FPL assets, as well as their attacking ones, as they usually have quite a few of those, as well as what they've been doing in the transfer market to help strengthen their team even more so, which is mind-boggling to think about for this upcoming FPL season. If you haven't done so already, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe channel if you are new, and turn those notification bells on so that you can get the content as soon as it is readily available. Also drop us a follow over on Twitter so you can keep up to date with any and all FPL news, from summer transfer news to potential players added to FPL and anything in between, as well as give us a follow over on Twitch so you can join us live for our preview and deadline streams, or any impromptu FPL streams that'll be over on Twitch this season. We will be starting those back up just over a week from now. We'll have our preview stream either on the Monday or Tuesday at the start of the week, and our deadline stream on the Friday of August 5th, just before the FPL deadline for game week 1. Now, without further ado, let's look at Manchester City's defensive FPL assets for this season. Now let's take a look at some of Manchester City's defensive assets for the upcoming FPL season. We've known them for their attacking numbers, but the defense has some very good value players in there, even though some of them are a little bit more on the premium side or the most expensive in their role. As an example, Ederson last season was 6 million, has now come down to 5.5 million, alongside the likes of Hugo Lloris, which we'll talk about in the Spurs video, as well as Alisson, which we've already mentioned in the previous video for Liverpool. And he is someone who is very interesting over the other two, and the reason being for that is because Spurs typically have a lot of assets that you would want. The Kanes, Kulusevskis, Sons, Richarlisons, Perisic, Doherty, the list goes on, and we'll get to more of them in that video. And then with Liverpool, you have Trent, Robertson, you have Salah, you have Diaz, you have all these sorts of players. Darwin Nunez maybe even become a potential option there. Even Matip at 6 million might even be an option if he's playing week in, week out in the Premier League. But Man City, you never really know who's going to actually play for the most part. But there is one mainstay throughout the whole season, and that's Ederson at 5.5 million. He's going to play week in, week out in goal. Very rarely is he going to get rested, almost ever in the Premier League. Maybe you might see against a weaker opposition in the Champions League he might not play, but goalkeepers don't usually ever get rotated. Maybe in, like I said, the weaker Champions League games or the weaker FA Cup / Carabao Cup games initially, he might not play in those ones, but you can bet he's going to play, if assuming he's fit, in every Premier League game, which is why I think he could be a very good option. Team that keeps the most clean sheets, decent at saving the ball. He's going to rack up some bonus points if he does pick up 3 saves, because he's very, very good with distributing the ball with his feet. And might occasionally pick up the odd attacking return too, because he is very good at hitting those long range, like kind of through balls or long field passes over the top into someone who can get in behind and then potentially score. Especially with Haaland coming to the club, we'll talk about more in the attacking section. He could, I wouldn't be surprised if I saw an Ederson to Haaland goal this season. That would be probably one that could be on the card, so keep an eye out for that. Now, 2 players that were often in FPL teams last season, typically in a pair, was Aymeric Laporte and João Cancelo. Aymeric Laporte being 6 million now in FPL. Same price as Diaz, which I think might be a bit of a mistake, but I think Laporte is going to be that mainstay. And the reason behind that is because he's left-footed. And Pep Guardiola likes this symmetry with one left foot on the left side and one right foot on the right side. Laporte's a much better player, at least in my opinion, but a lot of people's opinions, than the likes of Nathan Ake, who is potentially being rumored to going to Chelsea. Doesn't look like that's going to happen now. But Laporte is someone who is very good at distributing the ball from the back, very strong in the tackle, very good on set pieces. He's very, very good. He's arguably the best centre-back in the league at the moment. And for 6 million... could be pretty good, to be honest. If you went into the season and just said, well, I'm going to get Laporte, Cancelo, and Ederson, I mean, you got at least probably 2 starters guaranteed almost every game in Cancelo and Ederson, who are basically undroppable. And then you have Laporte, who's going to probably play 95% of games, and he's very good from set pieces too. If you just want to say, I just don't want to deal with the headache of Haaland being benched, because there's reports that the reason he came to Man City, or one of them was that he knows he's going to get rotated, and it's going to be easier on his body, because he did pick up a lot of injuries here and there when he was at Borussia Dortmund. So that could be the way to go. I don't personally see it, because I think everyone's going to jump on Haaland for game week 2 when they go up against Bournemouth. We'll talk more about that. when we get to the attacking section, because I think the fixtures are better attacking-wise than they are defensively. But I think it's just one to watch out for. I wouldn't put it past us going Laporte and Cancelo later on. We have a bit more cash, and we can go very, very heavy at the back, and we have our bit more money and value tied up in our teams, to whereas we can expand our teams a little bit. And Edison might just be good for the first 5 game weeks, where the fixtures are pretty good. There's some clean sheets potentials in there, especially in the home fixtures versus Bournemouth and Crystal Palace in game weeks 2 and 4. Overall, I think City's defense is going to be good, and I think João Cancelo is one of those players that I don't think you should be missing out on him. João Cancelo and Trent Alexander-Arnold are 2 players that haven't left my draft, and they're going to stay there because they're just that good. I think Cancelo is expecting him to come in at 7.5, maybe even 8 million. The fact that he's 7 million, much like how Trent's 7.5, it's a no-brainer. I just think they have to play, and especially if they are to sign Marc Cucurella, who we'll talk about in the transfer section a bit more. Cancelo then becomes more of a right-sided player, which could potentially mean that he's on his natural side, which could mean a bit more attacking options in terms of his creativity. He could get into spaces where De Bruyne was finding himself and get more attacking returns, even more so, and be even more of a threat as a 7 million asset. So we'll have to wait and see on how it kind of plays out. A lot will come from the Community Shield game, which is a week today or a week tomorrow at the time of recording. Recording this on Saturday, but next weekend it's going to be City versus Liverpool in the Community Shield. So we'll see how they line up there. Maybe they'll go full strength, maybe they'll go mostly full strength, but we'll see how they kind of play, because both teams are going to be playing differently now that they have basically a focal number 9 in their team. And speaking of attackers, let's see what Manchester City has to offer for attackers, because there are a lot of them this coming FPL season. Now, if we take a look at the fixtures, West Ham away, Bournemouth at home, Newcastle away, Crystal Palace at home. Those are some pretty good attacking fixtures for Manchester City, especially with Bournemouth and Crystal Palace at home fixtures. They should be able to dominate those games. Newcastle away might be tricky, same with West Ham, but you expect City to go 4 from 4 in those opening 4 games, and their fixtures are really, really good overall because they are Manchester City, and most teams aren't as good against them, to be honest, because, I mean, they're the Premier League champions, so they're expecting to beat everyone. And if you look at the season stats above me, 1 shot off of 500 shots inside the box for the whole season, 98.82 XG non-penalty. I believe that was top, maybe slightly lower than Liverpool. I know their total big chances were second behind Liverpool. I think Liverpool had 132, they had 123 across the season. But here's some assets that I've kind of picked out here. Grealish is mainly because of the price point. And also the fact that, when we talk about in the transfer section, his competition's basically been removed for the most part. But 7 million, if he's playing week in, week out, and the second season syndrome is actually a good thing for Manchester City players. Typically, Pep plays, let's say, a player 1,500 minutes across a Premier League season. That number typically goes up by 1.5, 2 times, and their output doubles as well. And we've seen that with Cancelo, and we've seen it with other players as well. Grealish could be on that train. If he is, from 7 million, he's not being picked very much. Let's say the first game against West Ham, he gets goal, assist, and he looks very good. And then Bournemouth, he rips it up as well, and could be the main creator, apart from De Bruyne feeding Haaland. He could be the easy way into the cheaper midfield slots, and we just don't have to worry about paying the 1 million extra for the likes of Mahrez and Foden, which could be a bit tricky there as well. Speaking of Phil Foden, someone who pretty much played a lot of games, didn't have that many FPL returns. I think he ended up with 9 goals, 5 assists, or something in that ballpark, which isn't that great, to be honest. From an 8 million FPL midfielder, you'd probably be looking more of like the 10-10 sort of thing, and that'd be a fantastic season for an 8 million midfielder if you're going to hang on to him for the whole season. But it's where is he going to play? Because we think Grealish is probably going to play on the left. Is Mahrez going to play on the right? Because basically all the competition's gone there as well. Foden can play off the right and did so versus Liverpool, cutting in on his left foot. But will Foden take up the mantle if Bernardo Silva were to leave in the central midfield? Does that lower his chances of basically getting involved with goal-scoring opportunities? He's going to be more of the pass, before the goal. We'll have to wait and see. I think Foden's kind of a wait and see here. Mahrez would probably be more of the my pick in the 8 million slots for Man City, just because, I mean, he fits in on the right, and he's done so and played there every time he's basically been on the pitch, really. And he's not going to play false 9 because they have 2 forwards now, so unless both of them are injured for whatever reason. But I think personally Grealish probably has more potential, then probably Mahrez is probably next in line. And then Kevin De Bruyne, someone who's just not being picked in most teams from what I've seen, mainly because he's 12 million. Same as Son, just hasn't been picked in most teams, which is really weird because a lot of managers had a lot of very highly priced midfielders last season in their teams. De Bruyne was very good towards the end of last season. He's also done well in preseason in their opening game as well. And I just think that maybe De Bruyne is the one to go for instead of Haaland, because De Bruyne is probably not going to be that rotated. To be honest, he's going to start most games, assuming he's not injured. But it seems like Haaland could be replaced by Julian Alvarez. You know, if, like, let's say, 60 minutes, Haaland's not really getting much service. They need something slightly different. Go with a little smaller striker in terms of stature, in terms of, he's going to run the channels probably a bit more, going to be a bit more crafty, whereas Haaland's going to be more of a, strength up front, very big presence in the box. De Bruyne is probably just going to be a mainstay. He's just going to be in there playing game in, game out, because there's not really many players in the world, let alone in Man City's team, that do what Kevin De Bruyne does. To be honest, there might not be anyone who could do what Kevin De Bruyne does. So I think he's potentially being overlooked. And me personally, I don't have Haaland in my draft at the moment, and we'll talk about that more so when we get to the kind of the draft kind of video, as it were. But I think that De Bruyne is potentially being overlooked, much like Son in that kind of freemium type of draft. And we can experiment with that as it gets closer and closer to game week 1. But just keep an eye on Kevin De Bruyne and see how he looks, especially in the Community Shield. Because if he rips it up in the Community Shield, there could be a big bandwagon going for like him and maybe Kane, and trying to fit Salah in there somehow and go slightly cheaper, because a lot of teams are including a lot pretty big at the back. But it's all depending on captaincies, because when they're this price, they have to be highly captained, especially if they're going to be highly owned. So that's going to be a wait and see. A lot of information will be kind of known, as it were, once we see the Community Shield game, how the two forwards, Nunez and Haaland, will fit into their respective teams. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Are you overlooking De Bruyne? Because I think I am at the moment too, and I feel like it might be missing a trick here, because De Bruyne is just that good. But I think maybe the goals at the end of last season maybe have bumped up his price. But let's take a look at what Man City are doing in the transfer market. Now, Man City, notoriously big spenders in terms of their amount that they spend, not necessarily their single player spend, but the amount that they do spend is usually quite high. Jack Grealish was probably the exception last season, coming in at £100 million by himself, but City tend to buy the 40, 50, 60 million pound players and buy quite a few of them in the positions that they need. And if you look at the ins, that's pretty much it. Haaland is coming at a cut price from Borussia Dortmund. He's already in FPL at 11.5 million and cost around 51 million pounds, but that was mainly due to his release clause at Borussia Dortmund. He probably would have cost probably 3 times that had he not had that release clause, so City may have got a very good deal there. Although I will say, he does have a release clause, I think, with City that's activated in a couple years' time, which I think Madrid might end up paying anyway, which is some crazy astronomical number, like 150 million euros or something ridiculous. So we'll have to wait and see how that one pans out. But for now, he's in FPL. He's going to enjoy his time at Man City, and I think he's going to be very good when at Man City. They've also strengthened for Fernandinho, who left the club, in Calvin Phillips, who was kind of ball-playing, everything midfielder that Leeds needed in order to basically keep defensively sound. And I think Pep's going to like him. I think he's very akin to the likes of Rodri. Maybe not as physical, but probably the ball player, taking the ball off the back four and doing quite well with it. Also, he's an English player, which helps out as well, because you need a certain number of English players in your team. And I think that Phillips can be a very good player in that role. I wouldn't be surprised at times if Pep, in like maybe the more kind of serious games or the more intense games where there could be quite a lot of attacking going from either side, that he plays with both Rodri and Phillips, and then plays De Bruyne in like the number 10 in front of them. That could be an option. So he did that towards the end of last season at times. Fernandinho just didn't have the legs anymore, I don't think, and he has been moved on, but obviously a great long-term servant of the club. Marc Cucurella is another one who is potentially a game breaker in FPL. He's currently 5 million at Brighton in FPL terms, but he's going to ask a hefty asking price from Manchester City to pay around 50 million pounds reportedly. And if he comes in, much like Kyle Walker, who I forgot to mention in the defensive side of things for Man City FPL assets, A 5 million Man City defender for a team that keeps 20 plus clean sheets. Cucurella is probably going to play the majority of games. Same with Cancelo. And then their understudies are going to be the likes of Walker and whoever else plays at left back, really, because there isn't really one. Because Zinchenko's been sold to Arsenal, who we can see in the out section there. It's probably going to be Cucurella and Cancelo playing week in, week out. And then they have maybe Nathan Ake or Laporte potentially as a backup left back, sort of. Not really sure what they're going to do there. So I think they definitely need Cucurella to come in. I think they'll get this deal done. It's just a matter of when. Because if he comes in and gets embedded before the start of the season, then that could be quite good for Man City as well. In terms of the outs, like we mentioned, a lot of the competition on the right-hand side, Sterling, who was deployed there, Jesus, who was deployed there, is going to Arsenal for around £45 million and is in the FPL at a very good price at £8 million, could be a reason to pick the likes of Riyad Mahrez or a Jack Grealish, because they don't have someone who can play on the left as a backup, and they don't have someone who can play on the right as a backup. It's just going to be those two. And they're going to have to rely on potentially younger players or players changing position or being slightly out of position. Maybe we see like a Julian Alvarez playing out on the left with Haaland through the middle and Mahrez on the right, and that could change with Mahrez going out to the left and Julian Alvarez coming off and bringing on Phil Foden and putting him out on the right. That's going to be yet to be determined, but I think that Sterling and Jesus are very good, transfers for City. If they were looking for, the likes of extra game time and that sort of stuff, then they're definitely going to get it, because Jesus looks to be flying at the moment for Arsenal, and I think Sterling will be very good at Chelsea as well, with the amount of service that he can get from potentially Chilwell and Reece James. And if he's playing in a false nine role, that could be quite good. But I think for Man City, I don't think it really hurts them too much. I think it actually makes them easier to kind of predict, which is good, because if you have a team that has a fairly set lineup that's keeping the most clean sheets and winning the league every season, probably going to want 3 of their FPL assets, I would think. So, but let me just think down in the comments below. Do you think City will get the Cucurella transfer over the line? Do you think they need to strengthen anywhere? I don't know. It's Man City. They usually have good players in every position, but I think they could get Cucurella, and that would probably be the final transfer business that they do for this FPL season. But like I said, let me know what you think down in the comments below. How many Man City players are you going to be having going into this game week 1 of the new FPL season? Welcome to the Fantasy Football Scout members area, the one place that you need to be tuned into for the upcoming FPL season. It has a wide variety of resources and tools that will help improve your FPL game today. It has a bunch of different members-only articles written by some of the best FPL managers across the globe, heat maps for all the players and positions, as well as player comparison tools, which will help you see side by side who is going to be more effective for your FPL team, fully customizable stats tables powered by Opta stats, and much, much more. Use the link down in the description below so that you can get access to the Fantasy Football Scout members area today. It'll help improve your FPL game. This video has been sponsored by Manscaped, the best in male below-the-waist grooming. Make sure to check out manscaped.com so you can see the latest and greatest updates to their lawnmower, as well as their performance package, and much, much more for all their gadgets and gizmos to help keep your family jewels looking as shiny as ever. Make sure to use the code FLAME20 so that you can get 20% off your next Manscaped order, as well as free worldwide shipping. Go check out manscaped.com today. And that is going to do it for the Man City edition of Team Watch. If you haven't done so already, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe channel if you are new, and turn those notification bells on so you can get the content as soon as it is readily available. Also, drop us a follow over on Twitter so you can keep up to date with any and all FPL news, and give us a follow over on Twitch so you can join us live for our preview and deadline streams, which will be exclusively over on Twitch this season. And lastly, make sure to check out the Fantasy Football Scout members area in the description below. There's a link down there that'll take you directly there to their members area so that you can sign up and get access to all the stats that you saw and more on this video, as that's where they came from, the Fantasy Football Scout members area. It's going to help elevate your FPL game. Thank you all for watching, and until the next one, take care.